Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Susi, and I'm going to be talking about depression and African American women today. So, my research question is: how does annual primary care screening of African American women ages 18 to 50 years old residing in low income urban areas in the same county with depression utilizing the CESD to determine the level of severity of the depression compared to the standard annual depression questionnaire with biweekly follow ups over 5 years of treatment? So, for some background, depression affects many people without consideration of their situation, can affect any gender with any background. It can be a serious medical condition that influences how one acts, thinks, and feels, and creates various emotional and physical problems and influences abilities to work and do any other daily activities. Depression affects 1 in 6 people in their lifetimes and can be caused by biochemical, genetic, environmental, and personality factors. Depression is often diagnosed based on symptoms relayed during an evaluation with a healthcare professional. Women specifically have different forms of depression, such as premenstrual dysphoric disorder and postpartum depression. Both diagnoses are in relation to hormones produced by menstruation and the hormones that follow giving birth. Women are twice as likely to have an episode of major depression when compared to men, and African American women are only half as likely to seek treatment. Depression is poorly identified, particularly in African American women. These women often have symptoms that include sleep disturbances, irritability, and self-criticism, or are somatic. And due to these non-stereotypical symptoms, many healthcare professionals miss depression symptoms, and this results in underdiagnosis and undertreatment of African American women. When looking at the COVID-19 pandemic specifically, there were higher rates of infection, and it was prevalent mostly in communities of color. These communities also had greater exposure to stressors that were pandemic related, such as unemployment and food insecurity. When compared to white adults, African American adults are less likely to receive the appropriate mental health treatment. So, the CESD depression scale is a 28-question self-reported questionnaire that involves a variety of symptoms that include somatic symptoms. This may not be the most common questionnaire in many physicians' offices. However, this questionnaire is the most inclusive to all participants. This is scored on a 4-point scale that can be utilized for ages 6 through older adulthood, and it is valid across gender and culture and remains consistently valid and reliable. The significance of this study is that mental health is a taboo topic, especially in communities that have a large amount of minorities. There is minimal research into depression in minorities, and this is including the discrepancies between white Americans and any minorities. In 2010, there were less than 100 articles present. In 2021, under 200, and since the beginning of 2023, only 42 articles have been published. These typical screenings often overlook most Black women. So for me personally, I have an undergraduate degree in medical biology and a minor in psychology. I have a family and friend history of low income and personal histories between friends, family, and myself with depression. So the recruitment process begins with interviewing African American women ages 18 to 50 years old in the area of Clarksdale, Mississippi, which has a population of 14,410, with a 81.2% of the population being African American and 41.6% below the poverty line. The sample size was determined by a chi-square analysis and will be a total of 200 participants with 50 in each group. In order to recruit the individuals, we will go into any community centers, churches, and go in neighborhoods where the desired population resides. There will be one control group, which will consist of individuals previously diagnosed with depression and are receiving medication and cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And there will be 3 study groups: the CBT therapy, medication-based therapy, and both CBT and medication, and each will have 50 participants. In order to determine whether the women qualify is based on previous medical history, and there will be a standard screening to determine their diagnosis utilizing the CESD. However, severity will not be determined using the scale immediately if someone is diagnosed with anxiety, PTSD, or other non-depressive mental health disorders. According to the DSM-5, or no signs of depression, they will be dismissed. So this interview part of this study is going to start with 10 open-ended questions, and they will all relate back to the quantitative questions of the CESD. So these are the 10 questions that will be asked. So these 10 questions will be asked and compared to the CESD scale to determine the severity of an individual's depression, which will go into more detail in the quantitative research section. We will look for certain patterns and group them with the meaning unit, condensed meaning unit, and then we will be able to code, categorize, and look for any emerging themes. The quantitative part of the study is going to be based on a chi-square analysis and the 10 questions from the qualitative analysis compared to the 20 questions of the CESD, and each question will be coded to a specific question, and it'll help identify the severity of depression. So the group will start with the initial interview as baseline, and then there will be bi-weekly follow-ups with one of the designated psychiatrists focused in CBT therapy. The group that is solely getting the CBT therapy will be followed for treatment bi-weekly. Those on medication will follow with their prescribing provider, and those doing both will follow with the psychiatrist that follows the prescription with CBT therapy. There are 3 medication options. It's Tofranil, fluoxetine, and Zoloft, because they have been found to work best with those who have somatic symptoms of depression. And once we get the results, it will allow for faster diagnosis for the initial diagnosis of these women. It will allow us to see what the best treatment options are going to be, and it will give us the ability to get those the help that they need. And that is all, so thank you very much for listening today.